Hey fam, welcome to the Free Trail Podcast and our new presenting sponsor. We're so happy to now be working with The Feed. Thefeed.com/free trail is where you need to go. It is the one-stop shop for all your training and racing nutrition needs. They have over 200 of the world's best nutrition brands stocked in one website. It's a fantastic resource. We've been big customers for a long time. We're really proud to work with them. Some of my favorite products that you can find at thefeed.com/free trail. Gnarly Nutrition Whey Protein Powder. I like the chocolate flavor. I have some of this after every one of my workouts and long runs. For in-run nutrition, Orange Drank. You'll see my big dumb face on it. Also from Gnarly Nutrition, enhanced sodium concentration here in the world's best fueling drink mix. Finally, HVMN, Ketone IQ. I have 2 of these ketone shots basically every single day, once before I go running and once in the middle of the afternoon when I need a little extra energy. Go to thefeed.com/free trail and you're going to get an $80 credit, free money to spend at thefeed.com. It'll be $20 right away and then $20 every 90 days thereafter. You'll also get a sweet Trail Running Will Save the World water bottle. Again, that's thefeed.com/free trail. You'll get $80 credit to spend on your favorite nutrition products. And if you are international, they do ship internationally as well. So you can take care or at least take advantage of that great offering from The Feed. Big thanks to The Feed for supporting and thank you for watching the podcast.
Chris Myers, welcome to the Free Trail Podcast. Good to see you, buddy.
Thanks for having me, dude.
I feel like we've seen a lot of each other this year between Black Canyon, Gorge Waterfalls, last weekend at Canyons, and it's good to finally see you here in digital format and good to finally have you on the podcast.
Yeah, it's good to finally be here. I've heard a lot about the podcast.
Heck yes, dude. Well, if you've heard a lot about the podcast, you know my traditional opening question for you, sir. That is just a good way to get to know you. What makes you you? What makes Chris Myers a unique human being on planet Earth?
Oh man, way to put me on the spot. I wish I had some prep time for this question. What makes me me? I'm just a little guy. I'm just me. I mean, if you've seen my Instagram handle, I am half Asian. Huge part of my identity. No, I'm just kidding. I think I am a collage of all my experiences and all the people that have been around. But I think if you were to summarize me, I'm relentlessly silly. So
relentlessly silly. And I did a little homework. I talked to some of our mutual friends, and that was a theme that came up. And maybe the silliness is reflected in your Instagram handle. Do you want to say a few words about that?
Oh yeah. I made that back in high school. So I grew up in the desert area north of Los Angeles, and there weren't that many Asians there. So me being half Asian was a big point of uniqueness. And then I went to a UC, and it seems like my white half was the more exotic half of me there. So I went from being really unique to like, oh, I'm just a normal person. A large population of the student body is Asian. So I was like, all right. I feel weird. That's my handle now, but it's just kind of stuck.
Half Asian Chris. Everybody go give him a follow. Chris, I'm really excited
like art.
Yes. If
and
you
a little
like
bit
art
of running stuff
and sports and running, he's the guy to follow. And we're going to touch on all that. I think starting with art. I had Lottie Brinks on the podcast last week, and I figured we kind of start in the same place that I did with her. She's a designer who has a lot of unique, creative, artistic capabilities, and it seems like you do too. From what I know about you, you are multi-talented and make your career as an artist outside of being an athlete. So tell us a little bit about your artistic background and what medium of art you consider your specialty.
Yeah, so I guess I should just give credit where it's due. My parents are both art people. They actually met at Cal Arts, and every time I tell people that, they're like, "Oh, it totally makes sense." I'm like, "Wait." I kind of, you kind of have to. I feel like I became my own person based on what I've done. They definitely facilitated an environment where art was, like very encouraged, or just like if I wanted to, there was an opportunity to learn art. But I went to UC Davis and I majored in art. I wouldn't always recommend majoring in art because it's a really tricky discipline post college, but I believe if there's a passion you have, you can find a niche for it anywhere. But I went to school for fine art, and there's not a whole lot of marketable professions you can do with that. That like,
You
you
like
know, give
work in
you
a museum
steady,
or a gallery or something.
yeah, be the starving artist type thing. But I was like, all right, I want healthcare and like, you know, 401k. What do I do? And, you know, thankfully there's a huge demand for visual effects in the entertainment industry. And I was able to translate some of my more fine art skills into, you know, being a little bit more technical and, you know, finding my way to problem solve in the visual effects industry. Yeah.
So be a little bit more specific. And one thing I'm curious about is to what extent your parents' artistic capabilities map to your own. Do you pursue similar mediums to what your mom and dad did? Obviously, it seems like you mostly
Gosh.
work in a digital space now, but have you had experience working with analog art too?
Oh yeah, I mean, gosh, I'm such a combination of the two of them. It's not even funny. So my dad does more digital stuff. He's actually in the well, I'm in the same industry as him, so kudos to him for starting that. Um, but my mom does more like painting fine art, and what I do is kind of really smack in between. It's what's called digital matte painting, or DMP for short, which is basically taking fine art skills and making a lot of paintings and elements in Photoshop and then putting them in a more technical sense into like the backgrounds and stuff. So like say this background behind me, they're like, we don't want those trees, or we want like palm trees. I would go in there and make the palm trees in Photoshop and then put them back in the background. And I think my dad's job would be the guy who put everything together, something like that. But I still do a little bit of the assembly myself. So it's kind of fine art in visual effects. So I have painter in my title. So go me for, you know, doing that in college and continuing to do it after. But yeah, I used to do a lot of oil painting and stuff.
Weird question. Are you right-handed or left-handed?
Can you tell?
I would guess you're left-handed.
No, man, my right hand, I got that callus from pen.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm right-handed.
The reason I ask is because I feel like a lot of creative people happen to be left-handed. Am I touching on something there? Do any of your classmates, colleagues, are they disproportionately lefties?
Didn't know a bunch of lefties. Maybe it's got to do with the whole left-right brain thing, but I just learned with my right hand, so I've always been a righty.
Yeah, awesome.
You can make it's another tool. That's what I've learned. You know, if you're an artist at heart, you can make anything a tool. So like now my tool is the computer instead of, you know, paint and brush.
Interesting.
And canvas.
I want to talk more about that in a sec, but maybe first just add a finer point to what you do professionally outside of being a runner. Like from what I've heard, you work in the entertainment industry. I talked to Justin Grunwald today via text. And he said that you worked on Ted Lasso. So
yeah,
tell the audience. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I'm, you know, relatively new to the industry because I'm only 27, and you know, college was like 5 years ago or whatever. Oh God, it's been that long. I've been out of college longer than I've been in it.
Easy, bro. I'm 38.
Okay, sorry. So, yeah, the thing about visual effects is we work for months, sometimes like not a year, but like a long time on really brief and fleeting moments you'll see. So I haven't worked on a ton of things, but the things I've worked on, we've just spent like weeks and months working on. And one of my first projects was Ted Lasso. I remember, well, sorry to break it to you guys, none of the stadiums are real because, you know, they couldn't really pay everyone to be in there and rent a stadium. So it's all just like shot on fields with like, you know, big, you know, stadium lights on like those cranes and stuff. And I remember my first job was like to make some of the jumbotrons there. I was like modeling them in 3D, but I've kind of moved on from like I've done a bit of 3D modeling and rendering, but I mostly stick to 2D, or what we call 2.5D, where we, you know, make things in 2D and we kind of put them on like rough approximate geometry, and it's like projected on there, so it's almost like it's 3D, but it's usually far enough away from camera where you wouldn't like really realize that it's like that's just like a box with like, you know, a building texture projected on it.
It's pretty rad though that you've worked on Ted Lasso. That's a pretty incredible thing to have on your resume as a
I've
27-year-old
never
young
watched
man.
the show, unfortunately.
You know, it's funny. I've never watched the show myself, and everybody tells me that I would love it, but
Exactly.
I've never gotten around to it. So maybe you and we can, you know, crack open a sparkling water, sit down and watch Ted Lasso before Western
Point out
States.
what's fake.
Yeah. One thing that's
No,
just popping into my head that maybe will be fun to riff on a little bit is the extent to which you pursue art recreationally now, because obviously when our passion becomes our profession, sometimes our interaction with that activity can change in the same way that sometimes it does when you go from running for fun or because you love it to it being your job. Is there anything that I'm touching on there? Do you still break out the the paint and brushes sometimes and do it for yourself?
Yeah, it kind of varies from year to year. Like sometimes, like, gosh, when COVID first hit, work really disappeared for a little bit. So I found myself wanting to spend more time being creative, and I would do like digital art challenges and honestly not too much analog art, because if you've ever painted with oil paints, it's a huge process of cleanup, prep, and just like it's a lot of work. And especially because you can't wash the paints down the drain. You can't even wash your brushes with water if you use mineral spirits and stuff. So it's mostly been a hassle, but I find the easier it is for me to create stuff, the more I do it. So I would really, jump off the deep end in some digital art stuff. Like last October, I was doing a challenge where I was trying to do like a piece a day and getting like a daily theme. And that was so much fun, but also so much work because I was like running, working, and then just like spending like 5 hours on these things. But I think it varies, as I've said, based on just like where I am and what I want to do. So currently I'm, this past year, I've been putting more of a focus on my running, and work has been somewhat lighter because of the writer's strikes. And that's unfortunately negatively affected my job, because those writers, they need to write so they can film it and then I can work on it. But yeah, so it's been slower. So usually when work ebbs, I either become more of an artist or a runner, and I'm kind of choosing to be more of a runner. But like you said, like working in your profession when it's a passion it's a bit of a toss up. You can definitely go through burnout. I've gone through stages where I'm like, I don't want to look at the computer anymore. I don't even want to watch these TV shows. But I haven't run into that yet with running because it's not really my job.
Interesting. Say more about the turmoil in the entertainment industry right now. That's something I'd love to learn about. I mean, you're still early in your career, but with the strikes last year, everything that's going on with AI, that whole revolution that's taking place. Speak about that. I'd love to hear what it's like being on the ground at a time with so much change in the industry.
I'll touch on AI first. AI is just a tool, you're going to have to steer it. It might, lighten the load on some jobs in some parts of the industry, but as a fine artist, you can use it as a tool. So I think it's gonna take a lot more for it to really replace people. But in the meantime, we can just be creative and continue to use it as a tool or just evolve it as a tool. But I still think that at the end of the day, AI is going to have its place, but so are people. And then the strikes, goodness gracious. So, I mean, I want everyone to get their piece of cake. I want everyone to have their best, I want people to get paid, because big studios have a lot of power. And when other people don't have power and they have to, do something that's disruptive to get their, their quotas met or the pay they deserve, I support that. But at the same time, man, it really sucked because I was in a studio and great group of friends, and then it got shut down. And I'm like, I have to find a new job, and everyone's looking for a job. So it made it real tough. And there's still a lot of people out there without jobs. So I was very lucky to find a new place and was able to keep my head down and keep my job.
Has that bit of turmoil passed at this point? Does it feel like the labor and ownership are steering in the same direction again?
So Yes, it's going in the right direction, but since I'm at the tail end of the production pipeline, it's still taking time for it to reach me. So when the strike first happened, we're just like, oh shit, we can see it coming. And like it took a few months and then it just like hit us like a ton of bricks. But it was like the worst because we could see it. We could see all the production shutting down. We were finishing up our work and we're like, there's going to be no more work after this. So now we're starting to see stuff be greenlit, but a lot of studios are a little hesitant to greenlight stuff because they're being a little bit closer with their money, they're being more efficient, so they're starting stuff later or when it behooves them because there's like a bit of like a season. Sometimes the summer's pretty light and we have like holidays off, but it's starting up again slowly. And then once it starts up in earnest, I'm thinking like next year will be like a really good year. There's going to be like a ton of stuff out there for me to work on. But right now it's been pretty chill, doing a lot of like commercials and like music videos and occasional TV show stuff.
Interesting. Thanks for entertaining me on this. Maybe last question on it before we move on. The transition from like linear broadcast TV and movie theaters to streaming and stuff, that's another element that's added an immense amount of change to the industry, not necessarily compressing job availability, but certainly changing the way things are distributed at all. Does that touch you and your profession?
Yeah, I mean, most of the stuff I work on is for streaming. I mean, Ted Lasso was an Apple TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And like to that extent, like I think it just creates more jobs because there's like a huge demand for the entertainment and it's just really accessible. The only thing that might change is like it makes deadlines slightly tighter because they're like, we're releasing this to stream. I guess everything has a deadline if it goes to theater, but if there's just like a ton of stuff, like it's just like, oh, it's going to be, you're working on it now. It's going to be out in like a few weeks or whatever. So, deadline's tight. Clients get antsy. They give us all these notes, and we're like, work
let's
some OT.
go, Chris. Paint me a palm tree for the background. Speaking of which, you may need to work on the background of the Free Trail podcast studio here, buddy. I'm sure you can come up with some cool ideas. Mock up a few prototypes definitely for me, and we'll talk after the show.
We'll collaborate.
All right, so let's back up then. You said you grew up north of Los Angeles in the desert. Does that mean like
high desert? We get snow like twice a year.
Really? So where were you? That's not like Bakersfield. Where
no, not quite that far north. Like maybe like a 45-minute drive or an hour drive out of Los Angeles. So I guess I have 2 points where I ask people if they know where they are. I'm like, do you know where Palmdale is? And they're like, yeah. Yep. Do you know where Six Flags is? Yeah, between those 2 places.
Okay. So tell me about
a town called Acton.
Acton, California. So cowboy. Tell me about childhood. To what extent sport played a role in it? And yeah, what were you motivated by as a kid?
Oh, I just love being outside. We had a bit of property while growing up. Big creek. I would always go and catch lizards and stuff. I would just like love to roam around outside. And when I started running cross country in high school, I mean, if you look at my Strava bio, I ran in high school, but my high school wasn't the best. No, I'm just plugging these things I don't really care about. No, I just like to be outside, and all the running I did was in the desert, and actually started out mostly on trails just because of that's the way it was. We just run past these old like abandoned mines and go around hills and then mess around in like the ditches where like the creeks would run through. But that was just kind of like a bit of the Chris Genesis. I don't know. I just made that up.
But running has been part of your story since you were a kid.
More just being outside, but running really started when I was in high school. And gosh, it's so dumb. I was like, man, I suck at running. I want to see if I can just get better at this. So here I am, still trying.
Still trying. And my guy's got a golden ticket to Western States. So you grew up in SoCal, spent most of your life there. Did you go to school? You went to Davis, you said. Sorry, I forgot about that. So you went to Davis. You were
I forget sometimes.
Little bit further north, but then you were back in LA for a while. And very recently, you moved to Boulder. Tell me about what motivated that move for you, because it seems like obviously a it's an important time in your life right now and an opportunity to double down on being an athlete like you just described. And this is probably a reflection of that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I just, picked up and left all my friends, which is kind of a bummer. But the way work was going at my new studio, the remote policy is very generous. I was like, hey, what if I move? They're like, just update your IP address and tell us when. I'm like, okay, cool. Like I can just go. So yeah, no, like I said, like the running or the work as it ebbs and flows, I become more of a runner or more of an artist. And I'm like, okay, I want to run more seriously. I want to see what I can do because I feel like the ceiling of my potential has always kind of been like, above me and I haven't quite reached it. And I feel like a lot of my progress, even in SoCal, was like fairly linear. And, with the occasional bad race, we all have those. So I was like, okay, I have the resources and the availability to do this. I'm going to just, take a chance and move out to Boulder. And I chose Boulder because it's, got good proximity to, a big city and a lot of people I know. And it was like that or like Flagstaff, but I kind of thought Boulder might be cooler. Sorry, people in Flagstaffs. But yeah, no, I think it was definitely a risk. And if you ask Justin Grunwald, he thought it was the dumbest thing in the world for me to move to elevation a month and a half before Black Canyon.
Yeah,
it takes more time to recover up here.
Joke's on you, Grunwald. Golden ticket in hand.
It's okay. He got his OCC ticket at Desert Rats.
Let's come back and talk more about this whole Boulder transition here in a second, because I think it probably is going to be important as we begin to talk about Black Canyon and the road ahead for you and the environment that you're now going to be training within. But first, I want to talk about some stuff that Katie Asmith and I discussed as it relates to you. I gave her a call today. I know you two are tight or have spent some time together.
Yeah, stayed at her house before Mammoth.
Yeah, right. So she was sort of like your high altitude training camp, ambassador, more or less. So a couple anecdotes that I just want to tee up for you and have you respond to. One thing that she said that I thought would be interesting to chat about is that you felt like an underdog for a while and that it's sort of been frustrating for you. And I think it's relatable because everybody needs a breakthrough and it feels like you're having your breakthrough right now. But has there been a feeling of being an underdog and some frustration attached to that?
I don't know about frustration. It's always good to get recognition and, to feel like you deserve certain things. But I kind of like being an underdog or like a dark horse because you don't have a target on your back and all you can do is, if you succeed, it looks great. If you don't succeed, it's like, oh, well, but it's really nice when people don't anticipate, great results and you just like can put them out. So there is a calm, benefit in that. Like I'm not stressed about stuff because I'm like, like if I do bad, I do bad. But I mean, I guess you can take that mindset no matter how far up you go. But there definitely is a lot less pressure as an underdog.
But did it feel as if you were waiting for your breakthrough and now that you're receiving a little bit of recognition? Has it?
Yeah, this weird podcast wants to have me talk about myself.
Yeah, right. Dude. No, but you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I can sympathize with the feeling of like, you have had a lot of great results. And Black Canyon was an exclamation point where you went from being well known in circles of people like Katie and myself and Justin Grunwald to being more widely known among a less enthusiastic trail running fan. And that probably does carry some sense of emotional satisfaction, I would guess.
Oh, definitely. But it's also like a little bit scary and like hesitant, like, oh, the cat's out of the bag now. I gotta keep up these great performances. But yeah, no, it is validating, and moving to Boulder feels even more validating after Black Canyon. It's like, all right, I wasn't a total idiot, and like I didn't leave my friends for nothing for this niche sport. But yeah, no, I feel very, very happy about that. But I'm also like hesitant to like over celebrate or get like cocky about it. I'm just a little guy.
Okay. Another thing Katie said about you, and you can characterize this as accurate or inaccurate, is that you get very, very nervous before races. Is that true?
Well, I was really nervous before Mammoth Trail Fest, so she probably saw the worst of that because I gotten sick like the week before, and I'm like, I'm coming up, I'm putting all these chips in, I'm getting a little bit altitude adjusted. I'm usually pretty chill before races. You can definitely ask around because, like, I like being outside, and racing's just like a celebration of your fitness and being outside. And at the end of the day, I'm gonna have a good time. But a lot of like the nervousness is self-imposed pressure to perform well. But oh man, I don't think I came across that nervous. Sorry, Katie.
I mean, again, this is just opportunity to like, bring relatable things into a dialogue. And
Oh yeah, we all get nervous. We all
right.
use the porta potty like 5 times before a race.
Well, but also there's a special significance to where you are, I think, in your career, being 27, emerging into your prime, finally having that massive breakthrough golden ticket opportunity. And there just is more riding on the performances now for you, which I think can justifiably result in increased nervousness.
I think it's going to continue to become a larger factor because it's all still new to me. Like sometimes I'm like, oh wait, I get to run Western. I forget about it sometimes. It's like, is it real? Like, it's this race I've always heard about, and well, not even really considered running, and now it's like a reality. And I mean, I feel like it's going to take some time for it to sink in. And I don't feel like Western's my cap. I definitely want to like do like international races and stuff. So just getting started. So I'm sure the pressure is just going to continue to rise, and hopefully I'll be able to do a better job at putting a cap on it.
How will you avoid the nervousness? How will you avoid the nervousness before Western States?
I'll be rational with myself. Rationality really works well on me. I'm like, all right, first 100, just gonna go for it, see what happens. I've put in all the work, I've done all the right things, I've given my body as few excuses to quit as possible. So if I do everything right and have a great day, I know I'm gonna do well. But if I don't, then it's just a learning experience.
Yeah. It's funny. Being at Canyons this last weekend, I talked to both Katie Scheid and Drew Holman, I think, about sports psychology and the impact that it's had on their performances. I think it was Katie. Anyway, I had multiple conversations about this. So anyway, I think it's just relevant for the listener here and also representative of, what's happening in the sport as a whole, where yeah, like there are a lot of like implications for the performances now for professional athletes. These races do require every ounce of physical, mental, emotional, psychological power that we have, and or reaching out to those types of resources and equipping yourself to confront nervousness when you go onto the world's biggest stage as a 27-year-old with the opportunity of a lifetime is probably an investment well worth making for you, and maybe something to think about over the next 10 weeks.
You make it sound so not daunting.
Yeah, dude, I need a sports psych now. Maybe you and I can team up on that while we're watching Ted Lasso.
Exactly. I think rationality always helps me. I can rationalize almost anything to myself.
What do you mean by that? Like, if you have a shitty race at Western States, it's not that big of a deal rationally.
Yeah, I can make excuses all day, but I can identify where I went wrong. I think, well, like hopefully I don't have a bad day, but if I do, I can take those data points and learn from them. But I don't know. I just feel like if you put too much pressure on yourself and you kind of forget why you run in the first place, that's gonna it's gonna get in your head. It's gonna when you're feeling tired, someone in the path with you, it's gonna like wreck you. But it's like it's 100 miles. You're gonna have plenty of time to come back. And if someone's like out of reach, you're just gonna have a fun time. And I mean the whole trail system from Tahoe to Auburn looks so pretty. I mean, back to why I did Gorge. I was just there because I thought it'd be like really pretty and really awesome. It's like I want to be out and chase some waterfalls.
Which you did. We'll talk about that. Another thing Katie said, two things, maybe you could tackle these simultaneously, that you have a heroic work ethic, and also you have a heroic appetite.
Oh,
Are those characterizations accurate? Maybe say a few words about those.
gosh, I'm getting exposed here. I eat a lot of food. Let's see. I think I'm very goal oriented, and when I set my sights on something, I'll usually be very mentally and emotionally like okay doing what I need to do to get that goal done.
Mm.
Like moving to Boulder, like it sucked to leave a lot of my friends behind, but I'm like, I have a mission. I want to be better at running and, sleeping at 8,000 feet, it helps. And also helps your appetite. Like I'll eat a lot. Like I think after brewing Mackay Canyons, we went to In-N-Out after, and I'm like, I haven't really eaten that much today. I just ate like 3 double doubles, fries in a shake. Just like, I think Mackay's mom was like, I'm more impressed of you eating all that than your ticket at Black Canyon. But yeah, no, I'll eat a lot of stuff. I got all the hacks to load up my burrito at Chipotle for cheap, and I love food, and I eat a ton while I run too. Like I don't know about the whole controversy on Spring Energy, but during like Sonoma, I had like 21 of those during
Is
the
that
50
right?
miler. Yeah, you should have seen me at aid station. I was like flinging trash everywhere, trying to like, get it all out of my belt.
This was a big theme of our coverage up at Canyons last weekend, especially Rod Farvard's characterization of his new fueling strategy and pushing that 100 grams of carbs an hour philosophy
Easy.
that I think a lot of the top. Is that sort of the same school of thought that you're operating within?
Oh yeah, I eat so much. Again, one less excuse for the body to quit if you feed it right. Barring the when your stomach's upset and you can't keep something down, that's like that happens. But if you can keep it down, keep a lot down, and you'll recover better and you'll feel better. Yeah. So, I mean, I think at Black Canyon I was doing over 100 grams an hour.
One less excuse for your body to quit. I love it.
Yeah.
So before we get to Black Canyon, let's talk a bit about your training. You work with David Roche. And from my perspective, the swap philosophy is just kind of small compounding training progression over time. And I was looking at your training on Strava before Black Canyon, and it's not a crazy amount of volume. So how would you summarize your training? How long have you been working with David, and to what extent do you feel like his leadership and that philosophy has led you to where you are now, where you really are emerging into that top category of athletes?
Yeah. So I've been working with David for like 3 years. I think like right around when COVID started, something around 2-3 years. I have to double check, but I really like working with them, and I really like not thinking about what I have to do. It's one less pressure for me. I'm like, oh, what work I should do? Am I going to second guess everything I do? When I know a lot of his stuff is based on science, so I try not to pay too much attention to it unless I'm like, oh, like, do I feel like I'm lacking something here? But I think leading up to Black Canyon, I think the most important thing was not running too far and getting too tired. I think I saw a lot of people doing like 30-mile runs like every week. I'm like, oh, should I be doing these? I'm like, like I've never done too high mileage. I'm not super high volume. And I think kind of like medium volume works for me and keeps me from not feeling tired. And also, like, I do take a Monday rest day. So all those miles you're seeing are just over 6 days. But I think a lot of like the back-to-back long runs kind of help. So the small compounding things allow you to, get that fatigue, but also still recover. And a big part of my Black Canyon prep was getting really tough at downhill. So like most downhills I would do in the few months leading up to it, I would just try and push, not really like get my heart rate up, just kind of pound my legs, not like to the point of injury, but just like, toughen them up. And I remember my first few runs, I was like super sore after like bombing down some hills. And then gradually I stopped getting sore after that. And I felt better after the 100K at Black Canyon than I did the 60K I did a few years previous.
So if you started, if you started working with David 3 years ago, you're 24, you're very much in the early phases of your career. Is there anything that you could say about the importance of progression and allowing yourself to develop? Because now at 27, you've had good results throughout your career, but it feels like that progression has now, like I said, put you in a position to where you have bigger opportunities to, perform to your potential at some of the biggest races in the world.
Yeah, I think it's important not to rush the process because training for ultras puts a lot of fatigue and a lot of strain on your body. And I've just noticed after the past few years, my recovery between like a 50K, like 50Ks has just shrank so much. I remember how long it took me to recover after my first 50K. I was completely wrecked. And then I'll take like maybe kind of a down week after a 50K and just right back at it the next week. And that just shows that it takes a long time to toughen the body to get to, the level where I needed to be. And, not rushing, it's really important. I think even last year when I did Bandera, it was my first 100K, and people were asking me like, "Hey, Chris, you going to take a ticket?" Or I'm like, "No, I don't think I want a ticket." They did a chasing gold thing with me. And I'm like, I don't know if I should do this. I don't really want a ticket. If it happens, it happens. I'll probably defer. But I didn't think I was ready to go for my first 100K to my first 100 mile in the same year. I want to just get more experience. And I think David's pretty good at being cautious. And I've yet to really have a real running injury. And I want to keep it that way.
You keep putting down 3 double-doubles and you'll be healthy like an ox. You'll be strong as an ox. All right, let's talk about some of this Black Canyon stuff because there's a lot that I'd like to hear about. First and foremost, I talked to our mutual friend Gus Gibbs today, who paced you there. And he said that you had called him like a week or two before the race and you had your pacer fall through and you were sort of looking for a little bit of extra help. And he basically relayed to me that you made it clear to him that your goal was to finish top 3 and therefore to be in the golden ticket conversation. Say a few words about, putting that target on Black Canyon and if that was indeed sort of the thought process and goals leading in.
First of all, big shout out to Gus. He's one of the kindest people I've ever met. Slid into my DMs and that's how I got started. So if you guys are nervous, scared to slide into those DMs, you never know what's going to happen. Yeah. So I very much tempered my expectations for Black Canyon because I signed up very early and I'm like, oh, this field doesn't look that bad. And then each month it got worse and worse. I'm like, all right, maybe a ticket isn't going to happen. So what I told Gus was the A goal would be, get a ticket, get top 3. It'll be race for third. And just like I told him, there is a chance. It's small, but there's still a chance. So we're going to hold on to that. But we're also just going to have a good time out there. And I kind of shifted my priorities from getting a ticket to 2 goals. 1, fitness test. I want to see how well this elevation stuff's working out. 2, I want to see who's going to crack because like I'm going up against all these pros, all these people who I admire, I've just ran with, want to run with, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna have a good day. Who's gonna have a bad day? I'm just so curious. I mean, that sounds like negative, like who's gonna crack? It's just like, no, I'm just curious to see how like the race was gonna shake out. And I just have like a very distinct moment in my brain from the race when we're like 2 miles in, we're all running like 6:30s up this dirt road before we hit the trail. And I could see John Ray, I could see Hayden, I could see Ryan Montgomery, I can see like all these guys, like Trace, everyone. And I'm just like looking at this stack field. I'm like, I wonder which one of you 3 is going to get a ticket. And I was like, it was just so like, I'm just in it with the dudes. Like this is going to be like
toggling your fantasy team in your brain out there.
Basically, I was so curious. And that's why I came out to Canyons. I was also so curious who's going to, get a ticket. Like, you never know. Like, we're all just people, like no matter like what we've done in the past, like we could all have a good day, we could have a bad day, but no one's untouchable.
So staying here for a second, I heard in your post-race interview, you said something about how you ran more aggressively than you normally do. And what you just mentioned from those early miles. I heard that the opening of Black Canyon was hectic. In other words, people were on the gas early. Talk about that change in strategy, running more aggressively. And I think the listeners would love to get a feel of what the dynamic was in the pack in those early miles.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I've notoriously been a back end racer. Like, let's just say, for example, at Sonoma, I was like in like 12th place halfway through. And in the last, 14 miles, I moved up to 5th. So I just like ran through like 6 people. And, if I'd started that move maybe like 4 or 5 miles earlier, or I'd been in a better position, I was, like a few spots up, I might have made the world's team. I was 2 away from that. And I'm like, all right, if your signature is running up through the back end of the race, you're going to do that anyway. So if you're just a little bit too cautious in the beginning, that's just going to cost you. So what I told myself was like, all right, I'm going to burn some matches, but not all of them. I'm going to stay in the mix, and I want to be in a good position for when I start like my move or whatever. I don't think it's like a signature. I just, sometimes I just get hungry in that last half of the race and I can just push harder. But I've just been able to like close pretty well. And, like last 10 miles of the race is where it happens. But at Black Canyon, I told my crew coming into Bumblebee, I'm like, expect me in the top 20 because I know everyone's going to go out super hard. And it's going to be super bunched up and place isn't really going to matter too much. So, I mean, it was kind of fun. Like I was pushing harder than I would have pushed. Like basically I would only pass people when I felt like they were ready to be passed because, when you're running a race, sometimes there's like a guy who's like, you're 5 miles in and they're not ready to give up position. I'm like, well, I'm not going to fight you for it. Like, I'll wait, and I would just move up when I felt like someone was like slowing down ahead of me. And whenever a gap would open up between like pockets, I'm like, all right, I got to move up. I got to be a little bit more aggressive, but not like run out of my means. Just like, push a little bit, burn some matches. So I got into Bumblebee like a little tired, not like too bad, but like definitely more tired than I'd like, would have initially been like a year before when pacing myself. I would have been like, I need to feel really good 20 miles in. And then I just got into a really good position at 50K. And then our buddy Gus picked me up and we just flew through everyone. It was so fun. I think he had a ton of fun doing that too.
Yeah, he did. So before we get to Gus and the second half story where you did run through the whole field onto the podium, going back to your move to Boulder the month before, Justin Grunwald told you it was a stupid thing to do. I wanted to ask how that may have contributed to this breakthrough. You can talk about the altitude component a little bit, but what I'm more interested in is kind of the emotional, psychological element of it too, because you could see it 2 ways. One, moving is freaking hard and inconvenient, stressful, energy draining. But also it's a blank slate. It's just like a fresh start and an opportunity to really begin anew in life. And sometimes that opens up a new energy. So maybe talk about any of that stuff that's interesting, the altitude, the emotional renaissance of moving to Boulder.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've said a lot of times that, moving was, to become a better runner. But what really means a lot to me is community. And part of the reason I picked Boulder was because I knew a lot of people there and there were a lot of people I wanted to meet here. So moving to find a better community, I mean, not to say that the community in LA is bad, but there's fewer runners running at the same level as me. And I just thought like, I'm going to get like a few percentage points of benefit just running with like these crushers. So that was another big factor. And yeah, it was kind of hard when I moved because, you're trying to meet people, trying to run people, trying to pull them out of their clicks. But also at the same time, you're running and it's tough to recover. And you're like, is this really working? Am I getting fit or not? Like, I didn't feel like the pre-race energy I normally felt down at sea level before Black Canyon. Like I got to Black Canyon feeling like level, not like bursting with energy. And I don't think I like felt like, whoa, I'm super fit. I feel super good until like 30 miles into the race where I'm like, oh, I'm not like really tired yet. Like, so it was kind of like a slow burn, a slow reveal of like, oh, this elevation stuff actually helped. But I mean, like I said, I'm goal oriented. I was able to just move here and just try and trust the process, and run with as many people as possible.
Let's come back and talk about the community and surrounding yourself with talent. But first, give us the brief race report for the back 50K at Black Canyon, because it seems like that was the moment when you developed a head of steam and started running through the field.
Oh god, that was so fun. So I go through aid stations, and when I start running again, I kind of have like a low moment because you've just stopped, you've taken on more weight from whatever you drink, and you're carrying more gel. So I was just like, Gus, I picked up Gus, and I'm like, what's it look like ahead of me? He's like, oh, they look tired. And then we just like started like moving up, and then we came around this corner and we saw like a bunch of dudes, and we're just like, let's be really quiet and pass them. So we just like moved up, and then we just like passed them really hard. And like sometimes you do that in races, like you pass someone hard, you kind of bluff. But once we passed them, I just kind of like didn't feel like slowing down. I felt like I could just like keep it going. And I could tell that they were like getting tired. Maybe they're having that post aid station lull where you're just like, oh, I got to start running again. And basically each person we passed, we were able to see the next person very shortly after, which was a huge mental boost. So we were just like able to chain these people together. And I remember running down to the river and I'm like, oh, that's John Ray. What the heck? I thought he'd be like winning and stuff. And I mean, shout out to John Ray. I run with him a lot now. He's a really great guy. But yep. I met him only once before. Like I visited Boulder in November. And like there was like a surprise party at his house to celebrate his javelina win. And I like shook his hand there. I'm like, hey, I'm Chris. I'm in your house. Like I never met him before. And then I'm like, he doesn't remember me. So we started crossing this river and I'm next to John. I'm like, hey, my name's Chris. And he's like, I know who you are. I'm like, oh God, is he pissed at me? And yeah, I was like, cool. And then I just like pushed ahead. And then I don't know if there was drone footage, but like me and Gus just like ran away from him, coming up the switchbacks to drop into Black Canyon City. And at that point, I had no clue what place I was in. And I'm like, Gus, they're doing the out and back. We're gonna see who's ahead of us. And then Hayden rolls through, Hans rolls through, and then Jupiter, and then no one else. We're like, oh my God, we're in fourth. This is crazy. So I didn't have a ticket in my brain in that race literally until then, because I was like, I have no idea where I'm at. Like I know I'm like top 10, maybe top 20 or top 15. I wasn't really like counting people until that moment. And then I was like, oh gosh, we blew through Black Canyon. And then like at like mile 40, I like almost got like a little emotional. I was like, oh my God, this could happen. This could happen. And then I like shut it off, just completely like killed my emotions. I'm like, I got 22 miles. Anything could happen. But I knew we were moving well because we just blew up that climb out of Black Canyon City. And we could start seeing like little traces of Hans. And Gus, the amazing man he was like looking at his watch when they'd pass a certain thing. He's like, we're 40 seconds back. It was so fun. And then we just like moved up and we blasted into second. And then a few points at a time we could see Hayden and we're like, oh, he's scared. We were hungry. We were coming for him. And the only person that like that responded to the passes was Jupiter. And he just like him and Hans were kind of moving, like a couple 100 feet apart when we caught up to them, and they were just going the same speed really. And then when we passed him, I'm not sure he understood that Gus was a pacer, but
he didn't understand that.
Yeah. So that's why he was running so damn hard. We just
tell us about that duel. Tell us about that duel. Cause I saw you guys come into the last aid station with 11 miles to go. You and Jupiter were together. You're only a couple minutes behind Hayden at that point. And
I remember, sorry, go for it.
Well, just for context for the listeners. I mean, Jupiter finished second, you finished third. And then in the women's race, Becca Wendell was second and Lauren Puretz was third. And all four of you guys, nobody was really talking about going into the race, where Hayden was victorious. Rachel Drake was victorious, both of whom came in as favorites. But the rest of those golden tickets went to dark horses. So I'm sure people would just kind of love to hear that dynamic and that battle between you and Jupiter in the closing miles.
So I remember when Jupiter first passed me, it was like mile 16 of the race. I was just in a group of guys and I had two guys ahead of me and I couldn't really pass them and they had started to kind of fall off like one of the packs, like the centipede was broken. Then all of a sudden I heard like a bunch of Spanish and then two guys, and Jupiter was one of them, just like blew past us off the trail and just like made a pass. And I'm like, who the hell are these guys? Whatever. I'm not going to worry about them because he had those bright green gloves on. And I'm like, I've never seen this guy in my life. Like he's not on like the list. I'm like, I don't know about this guy because like I didn't look too hard past like the top like 20 guys of names that I recognized, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And then I just like kind of forgot about him until I saw him coming out right behind Hayden and Hans. I'm like, oh, dude, this guy's crushing it. Okay. And then when we finally caught up to him, I was like, we've passed everyone and they've just like faded into the distance. And he was the only one who just stuck. And I just remember I had a lot of trouble passing him because normally I'd like sit behind someone for like 10 seconds maybe and then pass them. I stuck behind him for like a few minutes and then I like found a little area I could pass like safely. And the farthest I got ahead of him was like one switchback. And he just like stuck on me. And that's kind of when my race started to like degrade a little bit. Like I wasn't cramping, but my legs were getting all like stiff, and I was like trying to pump my arms faster to get my legs moving.
Whoa, that's interesting. Because it could be a psychological thing, right? Of like, oh, this guy's actually fighting, like he's not capitulating.
No, it was my body quitting on me.
Well, but no, hey, who knows?
I was happy to run with him.
But I mean, you guys are basically going toe to toe in the center of the ring, right? Like who's going to give first? And yeah, obviously it's a physical battle as much as it is a mental battle, but that's interesting that's where things started to fall apart, or where he maybe got the better of you in that one-on-one duel.
He had it on that day. I could not have beat him on that day.
Rad. Rad.
Yeah, no, he had it. So that's where like I started to feeling like a little bit like slower. But the thing is, when I slowed down, so did he. He just stuck on me. So I remember we could see Hayden for a bit around like, mile 48 or so coming into Cottonwood. And I'd started to slow down a bit. And I was like, he's going to pass me any second. And I was to call Gus back because, I want Gus to run with me. I don't want him to pace Jupiter. I want him to pace me. But he never passed me. And we just like stayed together. So we both probably slowed down a little bit. And then we just came into Table Mesa, and I took a little bit longer because I was starting to feel bad. I'm like, I need, make sure I'm good for this last 11. And he just like blew out of the aid station. I'm like, all right, I'm in third place. I just need to be as uncatchable as possible. And also like another unfortunate thing was my eyes were getting really blurry because I'd gotten like LASIK back in last June. And so I'm not used to running without glasses. And I guess partially it's a side effect that your eyes can dry out a little bit more easily after LASIK. And boy, were they drying out towards the end of that race. Basically, like every light I looked at had a halo. And we were like finishing into the sun, and the sun was just blowing out all the rocks. And you'll see in the live stream, like someone said like, oh, his pace is pointing out rocks for him. It's like, I couldn't really see him that well. So Gus, another amazing example of his pacing. He was like, we got a rock coming up here. Watch your step. And I was like, I think I can see it.
That LASIK.
Yeah, so I just need to do eye drops.
It's funny. When I talked to Gus, he mentioned the LASIK element too, and how that has impacted you as an athlete. And obviously Jupiter runs with glasses on too. It would have been totally gangster if two dudes finished on the podium wearing eyeglasses. But was the LASIK something you'd been thinking about for a while, and how much of that is motivated for athletic performance versus just
gosh, I got it so I could wear cool sunglasses. No, it's just I've had glasses pretty much my whole life, and just like the thought of like, let's say I'm out on a trail I fall or something happens and I break my glasses and I'm just like effectively blind out there. It's just kind of a safety hazard.
Yeah.
So my parents are very nice. I mean, maybe because I was giving my mom a lot of shit from like, you're the reason I have bad eyesight, mom. But my parents offered to pay a portion of my LASIK. So I'm like, well, now is a great time because I won't have to worry about cleaning my glasses, possible upsets with my glasses. And also, like, I can wear sunglasses. I remember when I went to the eye doctor, they're like, your eyes are slightly discolored from the sun. I'm like, oh boy, I really need to wear sunglasses. So,
has it changed?
Eye
Has it changed your life? I mean, is it
oh,
night
yeah.
and day? Wow.
I mean, it's pretty close to, my best days wearing my glasses are like my medium days with LASIK.
Okay.
It's pretty great. I just needed to do eye drops during the race and I would have been fine. It's just that wasn't on my radar at that point.
All right. So note to Gus, bring the eye drops for Western
I'll just have him spit in my eyes.
All right, so that would disqualify you from Western States. That would
he's helping me too
that would
much.
Be illegal assistance. Yes,
exactly.
I will turn you into the board.
That's Gus doping right there.
Yeah, exactly.
He'll drink some scratch first.
You got the golden ticket. Obviously, one thing that I'd love to hear you talk about. You mentioned your fourth place at Bandera a couple years ago. That was the only other 100K you've ever done, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
The way I don't know. I don't know what it is, but my instinct is that you're the type of athlete who's probably made more for the longer distances, finishing just outside of a golden ticket at Bandera a couple years ago, now 27 years old, finishing on the podium of Black Canyon with your chance at your first 100-miler. Do you feel like your strength will be in the longer distances ultimately?
I think so, and I hope so, because I've always felt like I don't have a real track background. I did a little bit of track stuff in college. Like, I actually ran on our club team. Shout out to Davis Cross Country and Track Club. We were a good club. We were like, I don't know if I want to say this, but some of us were better than the D1 team, but let's save that for later. But I don't have fast track times. I never really tried to do tracks. I don't really know what I would have been capable of, but I've always felt that I can go medium fast just for a long time. And, being able to eat a lot, being able to just stay mentally happy the whole time. I think that the long distances are really going to suit me well. And I mean, I'm coming into Western nervous, but also very excited just to try out the distance. And also, I've been cautious in my build and I feel confident that I can handle a 100-miler race and come out on the other end healthy and also be competitive.
All right. Well, you just admitted that you are nervous for Western States. We'll come back.
Oh, yeah. Who wouldn't be?
All right. Well, before we close,
Jim's probably not nervous.
Yeah. I want to have you I just want to chat briefly about both Gorge and Canyons, one where you were racing and one where you were crewing. Gorge, obviously, our race up there outside of Portland. You sort of used it as your final tune-up race before Western States. You smashed it. You ran 3:51. You were 7 minutes faster than Matt Daniels' course record. And it was just like another one of these like big exclamation point things where, at least those of us who follow the sport really closely are really taking notice as to who Chris Myers is. So say a few words about Gorge, that performance, and how it's, hopefully springboards you towards Western States.
I mean, I wasn't really doing it as like, I need to prove something. I wanted to find a good 50K race to kind of do a bit of a long run tune up, get in the mental headspace of racing where you kind of got to just be uncomfortable for a while and, test the fitness. Cause I haven't really been training for 50Ks, but, I like to, lace in multi-purpose reasons to go to places. So 1, it's beautiful. 2, it's a daybreak racing. 3, I wanted to get a practice trail race in and just like, have fun. And like, I very open expectations for what could happen. I'm like, I told people like, yeah, it's just a training race and we'll see what happens. And, let's have a good day and maybe try to be a little bit more aggressive and just run fast and, like feel fast. And I don't know. I just like kind of had fun with it because I don't normally race from the front. And I did that race and it was different uncomfortable mentally because I'm being chased. I like being the one chasing. But yeah, it was a great way to just like flex the muscles and experience something a little bit different and get out there, see friends, and run in a pretty place. But not really
So
to prove anything. I wasn't trying to put myself on a podcast or anything.
yeah, well, I mean, it was probably great to develop confidence, just test your systems before the biggest race of your
Definitely.
career that's coming up, and you nailed the test. Explain the hand gesture at the finish line for those who don't
Oh
know,
boy.
because this is something we're all gonna be looking out for now.
I don't know. Because I'm just a little guy. No. Me, Justin, and John Ray love to talk shit to each other and dunk on each other. And speaking of dunking and basketball, when you dunk and you kind of make fun of the other person for being small, that's another expression like, small. So that's the explanation. We're just saying to each other that you're small, just
Uh,
to mess with each other.
I love it. Who came up with that between the three of you, or was it a
It
workshop?
was a Gold Hill group run, and it started out with that, and then kind of progressed into that. I think mainly because there's an emoji for it.
Yes. Oh, I love it. All right. So for
So
those
I
who
can't
are
I can't claim credit.
Yeah, for those who are only listening to the podcast and not watching it, you can see the gesture that we're explaining here on YouTube or on the Free Trail Instagram account where we tagged Chris when he finished in course record fashion at Gorge Waterfalls. Again, we saw each other last weekend at Canyons. Awesome weekend. And I'm sure for you, just a lot to think about being up there on the Western States course, spending time in Auburn, like watching a world class race with a bunch of heavy hitters in it, sort of envisioning yourself being in similar situations. So, anything you want to say about the energy that it conjured, the way it changed how you're thinking about Western States, crewing for your buddy Mackay, who had a great day? I'm sure the listeners would love to hear about all of it.
Yeah, well, scoping out the competition, I wanted to see who was going to get a ticket. No, I mean, I love to be at races. It's like I get to go to a place where all my friends are at, and I get to help them. I get to be excited for them, and I get to help them. But yeah, I just was insanely curious who was going to do it because it was basically Black Canyon 2.0. A lot of the people that had done Black Canyon and not got a ticket were coming back, and I'm like, wow, who's going to put it together? Is it going to be someone fresh? Is it going to be Adam Peterman? Is it going to be Petter? Is it going to be Mackay? And I was hyping up Mackay so much. Like I was telling everyone, like, I'm crewing Mackay. He's gonna crush it. Because Mackay, he's also had a lot of good results, but he hasn't really had too many races to really showcase. I mean, he's literally the two golden ticket races he's done. He's missed out on a ticket by one spot. And I just think like you guys got to watch out for Mackay. He's not sponsored. Shout out, like, not sponsored. Want to have a solid guy who's really nice and just like really fast. And he was gonna do Black Canyon, and he got a little bit of an injury moving some stuff beforehand. And of course, it's not a great idea to start 100K when you've got like a pulled muscle. But I was like so relieved when he didn't race because I think Mackay would have edged me off the podium there. So I have a lot of belief in him, and I mean, he really threw down, and I was just excited to be out there and crewing him. And he got a fourth place, like a few minutes behind Petter. And I mean, he had to. I don't know if he'll appreciate me saying this, but if he hadn't taken all those bathroom stops at the end, he might have got a ticket.
Interesting. I happened to run a couple miles with him on Cal Street, and he strikes me as a special athlete. Sometimes you can just like feel whether somebody is really talented. And to me, he gives off that vibe. Since he didn't get the golden ticket, is Mackay jumping on team Chris Myers for Western
Oh
States? Because
yeah,
that's a dangerous
yeah,
crew.
yeah. He's going to be on my crew. Haven't decided if he's going to pace or not, but
Good
Gus is for sure
grief.
going to be in the mix.
Gus Gibbs, Mackay Clemens, and Chris Myers. How do you bet against that trio? That's a hell of a team. All right, so talking specifically about Western States, we're now in crunch time. What do we have? 9 weeks to go, I think it is.
Something like that.
Something like that.
I
So,
don't keep track of things.
but my point is that this is now make or break. These next, call it 6 weeks, are probably Chris Myers taking himself to the woodshed every day. Compliments of Coach David Roche. What does the training look like? In what ways are you going to put yourself in position to arrive there in Olympic Valley in top form?
Just be really tough for downhills and be really heat acclimated. I mean, it's a little bit tougher out here. I mean, there's some snow on the ground over there, but I mean, doing a lot of heat training, a lot of sauna, fueling well, and just getting like decent volume. I don't want to like, start each week feeling tired, but I want to feel like I'm working. But I think the biggest thing is just making sure I can handle a lot of downhill and heat, and I think the rest is just going to have to, iron itself out on race day.
You got to give us a little bit more than that. What is like? Are you turning the volume up a little bit? Are you going to like longer, slower intervals? Are you going to take any risks, or is it just like,
I don't think it's a good time to take too many risks for my first 100. I think I just got to be careful. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I might take risks like halfway through the race if I'm feeling.
Training. In training. Like, are you going to do more volume than you ever have? Have you and David sort of talked about what's the goal at Western States and how?
I haven't talked volume yet. I'm the kind of guy who looks at the training plan like the night before or the morning of, and I'm like, all right, I guess I'm doing this. But I do think more volume is definitely in there because, I mean, it's 100 miles, so I gotta do some decent days where I'm just out for a while. I think some tougher downhill workouts. I haven't really looked at my workouts for the next like few weeks, so I don't really know. But I just imagine it's going to be a lot of volume, and what I've been doing has been working pretty well. So it's probably not going to deviate too much from what I'm doing, unless I learn a tough lesson out there. Then I'll change it up. I learn from my mistakes.
Okay. Well, maybe a different way of asking the question is just have you meditate on just one of the things that struck me is just the level of the pros now in the sport and how everybody's just really all in and really focused on the things that you just mentioned, heat acclimatization, doing the traditional training, but hearing Rod Farvard talk about how he's hired this nutrition coach who's totally changed his game and he just wins, has the biggest performance of his career. Seeing how Katie Scheid approaches the sport like the consummate professional and finishes 6th overall in a golden ticket.
That's wild
race. There's anything that you want to say just like about this new era and your position within it, things that you're picking up from other athletes in the sport that you hope to apply, or in any ways that you're sort of embodying a similar all-in approach?
Okay. There is one thing. I'm doing. I got a strength coach. I'm doing some strength training now because I feel
can
like
tell, bro.
That holds it together. Yeah, it's all lower body.
You're making me feel like this, dude. You're making me feel like that.
That's right. No, I think I identified a few problems at Black Canyon that I wanted to work on, and one of them was strength training because there's always going to be a decline in performance, and doing strength is only going to we want to change the slope of that decline. And going all in is me moving here and spending more time at elevation and working on getting stronger. I think those are like my little aces in their holes.
Amazing, man. Well, we can start wrapping up, but it's been really fun to just sort of observe your progression from afar to see your consistency. I think is pretty remarkable. Just if you look at your ultra sign up, like it's all like whatever thirds and fourths and fifths and sixths.
Sub podium.
Trying
to change that.
Sub podium. You have changed that so far here in 2024.
It's only 2 races. We'll see.
It could be 3 coming up here in 9 weeks' time. I close with the same question for everybody, Chris, which I have to pose to you, which is just who is one person that you admire inside or outside of sport, can be living or dead, and why do you admire that person?
I don't know if I've done enough foreshadowing, but I'm gonna have to go with Gus Gibbs here because I feel like we could all be a little bit more like Gus. He's such a kind and excited person. Like he's just like I was at Black Canyon and okay, so the way we met, I'd raced way too cool with him one time and never even talked to him. And I bumped into him at Mammoth Trail Fest and we'd only talked once in person. Then he slid into my DMs and was like, hey, like, how's it going? I like posted a picture of like some elk. He's like, those are cool deer. I'm like, I think they're elk. He's like, I'm just messing with you. And then we got to talking about racing and like before we even like finished the conversation, I'm like, he is a perfect pacer. I've met this guy once in person. And that goes to say like how comfortable Gus can make you feel with just like one interaction. And I could see him doing that at Black Canyon. Well, social butterfly, he'd be like talking to people that I know he'd never met before. And then within like minutes, they were just like buddies and stuff. And I don't know. I just really look up to Gus and I think we could all, you know, have his energy and be just as kind and, you know, that excited to run and help other people.
I love it, man. What a great way to end with a shout out to Gus Gibbs. I echo everything you said, and I can't wait to see him shepherd you along another incredible journey at Western States in a couple
Got
months.
dibs on Gus. But if you can get him to pace you, you're in good hands.
Called Gus Gibbs. He's officially been claimed for the pacing duties at Western States. Everybody else, do not send him solicitation. Chris, it's great to get to know you, buddy. I really appreciate you coming to Gorge and putting on an awesome performance at our race. It was great to see what you did at Black Canyon. We're going to be rooting for you at Western States. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me to both the race and the show.